Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets transformation. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, guiding you beyond pain into purpose. Let's explore the journey together. Hello, hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. And as you can see, I've got a brand new guest for you. This one is going to be a little bit different, and I would say a little bit special, but you're going to learn a whole lot from him. Today, I've got Judge Mentalist, or as I know him, JoBeth Bowers. Welcome, JoBeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, we're from what you're normally used to. I think we're going to go in a little bit of a direction here that's off the beaten path, but my hope is that it can be something interesting and perhaps even valuable to your listeners, and maybe something that they'll share with friends and family members as well.
Absolutely. Before we begin, tell us all about you.
Well, as you mentioned, I am, at least on stage, Judge Mentalist. I am a performing hypnotist. So, in the direct sense of change work, I'm not doing anything in the hypnotic world that is, again, people don't come to me directly for the purposes of healing or change work. However, I find it hard to believe that people don't gather some of that by spending time with me, whether or not they join me on stage or they stay in the audience. Some people say, and a lot of people say, that laughter is the best medicine. And sometimes I would say that in the course of what I'm doing, and I know this, it's not even a thought in my mind that, hey, maybe this is happening or maybe we're getting this. I have people who approach me after shows all the time to talk about, how great of an experience it was to be on stage, to be in trance, to basically be able to let go and enter another world, a world that many of them have never been through or have not had the same level of awareness of being a part of as when they're on stage in one of these shows. So it's something that I've become incredibly passionate about. And I'd say that passion that I have has evolved and continues to evolve with each and every one of these experiences. So it's, if there's any message to give everybody right now that too long didn't read or too long didn't listen or whatever it is, if you see or have the opportunity to go to not just my shows, anybody's stage hypnosis shows, get ready for a lot of fun. Get a group of people together. It does not have to specifically be because somebody just needs one of those nights to just kind of unload and let go. But if you've got somebody that's in that situation, that's looking to kind of crack out of their shell or do so in a way that's not unhealthy, that's not toxic. This is a great way to have that release that some people who will go out to a bar or a club and drink a few too many and make some decisions that they wish they hadn't. No, you don't have to worry about that here. There's no drugs or alcohol that's involved. And let's put it this way. If anybody's doing a stage show that's going to cross lines, that's going to embarrass people, that's going to have like overly adult material, if they're doing this for any amount of time, you're going to know that it's that kind of show before you ever buy the ticket. Because anybody who surprises you with something that you'd be embarrassed to be a part of isn't going to be doing this for very long. So if they've got a track record of performing and you don't see any indication from the promo that they're doing inappropriate or blue material, don't even worry about it. You should be absolutely fine. Because it's a lot of fun. And really it's for us as the hypnotists, as the quote performers. And I use that term so loosely because in these shows it gets to the point where we're not the performers, we're the facilitators. And the performance for each of our volunteers on stage is truly their own. It's derived from their own references, their own experiences, their own dreams, really, is what it is. And we're directing their dream sequence and they're performing what they're experiencing for the public.
Yeah. So, have you ever done clinical hypnotherapy or the therapeutic change work side, or was this where you began with hypnosis?
I have done, I've studied, but as far as taking on clients, and I get asked after almost every show, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? If you've got clinical hypnotists that are in your audience, I think that you probably will have a few. I would highly recommend finding a stage performer somewhere near you and try to create some teamwork with that, because if I'm going into a new market, if I'm on the road, I will try to find and reach out to clinical hypnotists, because I know, and I do a lot of road gigs, a lot of stuff that's nowhere near home. I'll do fringe festivals, so I'll be doing a week or 2 weeks worth of shows in one location, but then I'm gone and it's not where I normally am. So I'll try to create those connections so that I can be like, hey, I don't do that kind of work, but here's somebody that does. And I've also picked up a number of folks as colleagues that do that type of change work virtually, which, I mean, here we are doing a podcast virtually. This is something that 10 years ago would have absolutely been unheard of. I'm super fascinated with it. And I feel like almost every week I'm picking up more and new resources to learn more and more about it. As of right now, although the world of hypnosis and especially stage performance hypnosis has taught me about how important it is to be like water and to kind of go with what it is. I have zero intention myself of getting into that clinical world from a professional standpoint. But I mean, it fascinates me greatly. I mean, we didn't set any of this up, by the way, but within the last 2 weeks, at suggestions of others, I've gotten myself, which I haven't even cracked into yet,
Nice.
Handbook of Medical and Psychological Hypnosis, Hypnotherapy.
That's a good one.
I'm even starting to pick up some of the Paul McKenna books, a little bit of a UK legend there, just to really, not even for self-use, even though his products are designed for self-use, but to really be like, okay, how is he approaching this? How is he relaying this? What is the framework that he's using to really, because to me, that's a lot. You're putting a message in a bottle, and you don't do what Paul McKenna has done for as long as he's done it if all you're doing is hustling book sales. So, and obviously his results over the decades speak for themselves. So to be able to see, okay, I understand this concept of sitting in a room or on the other side of a Zoom feed or even a platform like this, to work one-on-one with somebody where there's a two-way street, or the things that some folks are doing where secretly, this is what I love so much about this world, is that secretly some folks are having their clients fix themselves through that conversation and through that process. So to see that how does that work in a truly one-way street? Here's the material, go. And it's not that same kind of self-hypnosis that a lot of us know about, but it's just some different in between. Again, I can't describe it.
Are you talking about Vinny Briggins?
Vinny is one, but I'm talking,
I just took his class.
yeah, he's fantastic.
He's amazing.
The class that he just did a couple weeks ago on the smoking cessation, my schedule did not allow me to be there, although I had been talking to him about it
We would have been in the same class.
Yeah,
That's
I
crazy.
had been talking to him about it since September, and probably even before September, really. And it's man, we're going to go off on a huge tangent here, but that's okay, and I hope nobody
We have time.
minds. It's you approach certain things in this world for one reason, and then so I'm already going to backtrack on what I just said about I'm not going to do this clinically, because I know that to be somewhat of a mistruth or a misstatement.
I mean,
because
I think you've already seen times when you've made a suggestion in a show and it's taken a bigger effect in life. I'm sure you've heard comments come back of, hey, participating changed my life.
And sometimes it's not from a direct suggestion, even though at the end of my show, I try to infuse positivity as folks leaving my stage go throughout the day, and I try to leave them with something positive. Sometimes it's very, very generic, leaving them a post-hypnotic that the next day, for some random reason, they're going to do something that is, they're going to do something totally good for somebody completely random. They're not going to know why they're pulled to do it, but they're going to feel great about it, and that momentum will carry day after day, where they may continue to do other just random acts of kindness. I haven't had anybody come back to say that, hey, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, and I think it's because of something you did in your show. But
Well,
sometimes it's just as simple as somebody who, as I was saying earlier, needs that just release, to just let go, to open up, to really see, hey, I'm capable of more, because I would have never imagined coming in here. And there are folks that come to my shows with no intention whatsoever of going up on that stage. And I, like most stage hypnotists, at least from what I've observed, there are very few who do this differently, in the sense that all of my volunteers on stage self-select. It's not even a raise hands, you situation. There is a row of chairs behind me. Some music is about to cue. It is first come, first serve. Be careful. The steps are here, whatever, depending on the venue that I'm in. And there are people who have approached me afterwards who, full on were like, I didn't come here to do this. I came here to see the circus. And certain things leading up to that point in which I'm inviting people on stage has been like, oh, maybe I should try this. Some of it's because people have preconceived notions about what hypnosis is or what it isn't. And the brief couple of minutes that I'm describing what it is or what it isn't changes that perception immediately. And some of it is some of the experience in there. I use one of the things that I love to use, which when I learned to do this as part of my mentor's show in Las Vegas, are pendulums. And it's not something that I can necessarily use with everybody in the entire audience, but I'll go out into the audience before I invite volunteers on the stage, and 6 or 8 people, depending on the size of the venue and the setup.
I use it differently, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I'll hand them pendulums, and I'll do a demonstration throughout the whole audience, and I'll have people move around in position so others in the audience can see it. And for people to have, just from that suggestion, that pendulum begin to move in a way that's like, I'm not having this do this, but here it is doing it. I've had people that have experienced that, and that was an inflection point for them of, maybe this isn't just some Simon Says sing along, and there's something to it. And I mean, even afterwards, one of those people came up to me and was like, I'm not sure if I was really hypnotized. And I was like, well, let me ask you this and let me ask you that. And then in the middle of that conversation, me just asking them questions about, hey, do you remember this? And would you have normally done that? And that you just see the light bulb come off, be like, okay, yeah, I get it now. I understand. And one of the things relatively early on that I learned, and a lot of this comes from talking to people after they've been on stage with me, is that there are many, many aspects of hypnosis that people experience so much differently than everybody else. And it is truly a unique experience for everybody. In fact, when I first started doing this, one of the things that I was most excited about and most wrong about was that I thought, this is great. I am doing 2 shows at the same time every night that I get up on stage. I've got the show that I'm doing for my volunteers up here, and I've got the show that everybody out there in the audience is seeing. And it was a cool idea, and it was really a motivating thing, until I realized, no, if you've got 6 people up on stage, you're doing 7 shows. If you've got 12 people up on stage, you're doing 13 shows, because each and every one of these people is experiencing the journey completely differently. And a lot of it derives from their own experiences. And it's not, a lot of times in the stage world, we'll set up routines and suggestions that we're going to do by implanting some framework or some hints, examples. Even like a popular routine that a lot of people will do is, they'll have one of their spectators all of a sudden speaks the Martian language, and they only speak the Martian language. And then there's another person that's an interpreter who is bilingual, maybe more than bilingual, but for the purposes of here, they speak English and they understand Martian. So they're going to interpret for us. And if you leave it like that, it's a train wreck. Because where's that going to go? Say something to me in Martian. Well, considering it's a language that, as far as we know today, doesn't exist, you have no reference point. So it's not like you're going to draw upon something from your childhood to be like, this is what it should sound like. Marvin the Martian spoke English in the Looney Tunes cartoons. So maybe you'll have like a high-pitched voice, but you're still speaking English. So setting up that suggestion with a little bit of a hint there that you only speak the Martian language filled with its boops and its bops, its clicks and its pops. Now I've given you what it's supposed to sound like. And everybody will take that and digest it. But outside of that, and this was a year or so ago this is where I had the light bulb moment and something clicked here for me. And that's where I really realized that I was doing N+1 shows at any given time, was a dance routine at the end where I believe this particular night, the suggestion was that they would be Vegas showgirls. And the dance routine changes depending on my audience. So if I'm doing a high school show, they're not Vegas showgirls. They're disco dancers or something like that. We tailor the show for the audience all the time, and sometimes on the fly, because we don't necessarily know who we're dealing with. And because a lot of times I will do high school fundraiser shows, and they're not, these are in the evening, these are on the weekend, there's a mixed group. I have done high school fundraiser shows where 50% of my audience were students, and everybody that came up on stage, because kids are faster than adults, were kids. Well, that takes my show in a different direction. I've had high school fundraiser shows where the bulk of the people in the audience were adults, and only adults came up on stage. So that kind of twisted and turned. But I have these folks up on stage, and normally some of this is predicated from the music that's playing in the background. Some of it's predicated on they're dancing kind of like you would think of in a club with loud music. And, the song that oftentimes I will use is the instrumental version of Pony by Genuine. So you get people dancing similarly to that. But in the middle of this one show, a year and a half or so ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, I had 3 people up there out of my group that locked arms and started doing a Rockette style kick line. There was nothing that came out of my mouth other than Vegas showgirl, that somehow that translated in their mind. I'm like, and I video all of my shows for purposes like this, for when something totally different happens that's hilarious in a routine. How did that happen? Why did that happen? How do we try to make it happen again? For insurance purposes, because if anybody ever said that they got hurt or something weird happened in one of my shows, which should never happen, but I've got the receipts. But also, obviously, I use it to promote myself. That's a big part of it. Most of my shows, if they're public ticketed shows, are available for people to buy the fun part afterwards. It's
Video blackmail for family.
blackmail for family, if you will. I mean, nobody's doing anything super crazy, but it really, in watching this like 3-4 times going through this routine, it was like, no, that was just somewhere inside. That was somewhere inside, and they got that themselves. All I did was lead them somewhere, and they took it the rest of the way. And it really started changing kind of the way that I would craft some of the routines in my shows. So now a lot of times, and again, every show is a little bit different and tailored for audiences, but sometimes I'll take people on an absolute journey where there's been a lot of build, a lot of excitement and everything with the audience, and they're into it, and they're cheering and they're clapping, and at a certain point, that kind of gets it. You can get tired doing that for 20-30 minutes almost consecutively. So I will oftentimes kind of shift gears on things to allow my folks up on stage to have just a weird journey. I mean, if they want it to be weird, because it's wherever they take it, and the audience gets a little bit of a break. Last year, I started doing a sequence that would ultimately lead me to the Martian language interpreter, but where they would start on a rocket ship. They would actually, it started as an airplane and became a rocket ship in a lot of the shows. But that's the fun thing about hypnosis, is that you can go absolutely anywhere.
At what point do you not identify this as channeling? Just pure channeling and having fun?
It's all it is. I will tell you that, and I'll put this out there for the skeptics, for the people who don't think that they're interested in going to or participating in a stage show, just do it. Welcome to what is probably going to be your new favorite obsession. And it's totally healthy. There's not the worst thing that you're going to do through prolonged use of comedic hypnosis is be a little more laid back and chill and cool. Wow, that's terrible. You don't have to worry about lung cancer or cirrhosis or any of the other things from other vices. You're not going to drain your bank account in a casino or at a sports book or other places that you can go to get your fix, so to speak. This is an absolute, natural, fun experience. And
I mean, think about it. Anytime you give the suggestion for someone to be a confident version of anything,
yeah,
they're then walking away with that gift of confidence, and that bleeds over into regular life.
And the fun thing about these shows is that for the most part, I remove suggestions from the show at the end, except for what I want them to take on and carry off of my stage. So things like that you're going to do, random acts of kindness or go about your day with a higher level of positivity and energy. All of these things are themes, near the end of my show as I'm taking out the silly stuff, but I'm leaving them with something that they're going to be able to take and really go somewhere with. So dovetailing back to me catching myself in a pseudo lie, and where I got linked up with Vinny about, and specifically the smoking cessation, is that I thought that wouldn't it be really great, back in the day, so to speak, when newspapers were a regular thing, hypnotherapists would just travel town to town, city to city. They'd get a conference room in a hotel. They'd put out ads in the newspaper and they say, hey, you want to quit smoking? You want to lose weight? You want to build confidence? Some of them would do one, some of them would do all three, some of them would do two of the three. They'd stack them back to back. They'd charge people like $100 a pop. Come on in, and they'll have 100 or 200 people in the room. They'll do a group, an explanation of what we're doing here and a group induction, and give everybody the suggestions for whatever the relevant topic was, and bring them out and leave them with whatever follow-up tools or homework was there. And they would, a lot of times what they would do is they would if they were also entertainers, they'd be in town doing a show on a Friday night. And they'd use that platform to say, hey, if you thought this was cool, these people that you didn't think were going to do any of this stuff came and did whatever, depending, they would reference obviously what was going on in the show. Tomorrow at the, Holiday Inn on 5th Street or wherever it was, we've got sessions for this, that, and the other, whatever they were doing. And they would use that to market these and make extra money while they were in town. And I'm like, why don't you do it the other way? People don't necessarily know, hey, I want to go to a fun and entertaining show, and hypnosis might be that show. People know that they want to quit smoking. People know that they want to have less stress or anxiety or be more confident or lose weight or whatever the other types of ways that you could do this in that format. Why wouldn't I do those sessions and then have the stage show that night? Use the draw of those sessions, the tangible thing that people know that they want, the problem that they know that they want to solve, and use that to draw people to the stage show.
That's a wild concept to think about. You could actually do a group smoking cessation with people as a stage show? Like maybe that's, part of the theme. You're working them all the way through it, and then at the end, everybody on stage quits.
It's if you certainly could theme a show, because here's the thing: the deeper you get, the easier it is to implant things that are going to have a lasting effect. So one of the things that we notice and regularly observe in our stage shows is that most of us are doing an induction that lasts maybe 4 minutes. And I've certainly seen longer ones. I'm not going to blow up anybody's spot to talk about where I see those or how they present, but they're a little much. But you don't necessarily get everybody in that 4 or 5 minute span exactly where you want them to be. But we design our shows to kind of ramp that up. And as they go in and out of routines, they naturally get deeper through the progression. So really it's a great idea to take and not just do it in the full format, but to say, hey, tonight's show is for you, people who want X. So if you come up tonight, or maybe you found an audience where you're advertising that show specifically, like come out, you will have a good time. And if you are interested, if you need to quit smoking, you're going to quit smoking after this show. And then having one of those lasting suggestions be from, the traditional ways in which people will help those quit smoking certainly could be done. And it's I've been really tooling around. I don't know how much I want to talk about this, but we're going to. So I'm here. I want to do a show that, a lot of people think of the entertainment shows as either in comedy clubs or the big laugh, laugh, laugh audience out here, people up on stage performing whatever they're doing, right? Whether they're doing silly stuff or whatever it might be. But I have this dream, and I'm actually starting to write it and put it into play to totally flip the script on that. And to do a show that doesn't have anybody coming up on stage. This show is not a look at what these people up here are doing stage. This is a show for absolutely everybody. Think about a planetarium. You go into a planetarium, you have this group experience where we're seeing what's projected up there, except I'm not projecting it up there. I'm projecting it in here. And it's known ahead of time. You come to this show, you will be hypnotized, but you're not coming up on stage. You don't have to worry about, hey, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want anybody to see me doing anything. Fine. That's not what this show is. But to take everybody collectively on this guided journey to who knows where, because I have not finished writing it yet. I've actually brainstormed with a couple of other folks. We're going to turn this thing into a 3-act sort of scenario. That way, anybody that might not get where they want to be or experiencing it the first time through, there'll be other opportunities within the same, probably about an hour-long experience. Still very much in the early planning phases and writing phases of where these journeys are going to take people. But
that sounds amazing.
Certainly something that could also dovetail to include some of the more clinical stuff. I guess I just don't see myself in that one-on-one setting of doing something different every time. But again, I've already backpedaled on saying that I'm never going to do anything clinical, even though I've known that I've made inroads to do on a different scale and in a different way, clinical type work. So I guess the plan really is to never hold myself out as here's the shingle, come in the door type of setup. Like I'll bring it to you.
Just from what I've met and understood about you, I don't see that at all, because as far as people go, you're incredibly talented, but also very dynamic. So on top of the stage shows, you're also a podcaster. You're also a judge, I believe, and that's where the judge part comes from.
No, I'm a lawyer.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer. And that actually, so the Judge Mentalist name, which is from the days, that's still the character from the days in which I was doing mentalism stage shows. Early on.
What even put you on that path? Like, where did that even spark for you?
So I was a lawyer, and sometimes a very thankless profession. In many ways, a very rewarding profession, but sometimes the greatest reward in that profession is financial, because it can sometimes be very thankless and it's super stressful. And when it gets off the rails and you get kind of burnt out, sick and tired of doing it, you need an outlet, you need a hobby, you need something that you can just disconnect from.
It's
And
also
for
really high
me,
stress at times, so I can
yeah,
see
for
why the appeal would come to have that place to healthily let loose when you need to.
yeah, and for me that for a while was magic and mentalism, and I'm still involved in that world. But
Yeah,
for in the
you've got
early
a show
years,
coming up, don't you?
I'm sorry.
You've got a show coming up, don't you, in
Oh,
September?
I got convinced. I
Mentalism.
have not done. I had not done a purely mentalism show in several years, because I just, when I started doing stage hypnosis, I fell in love with it so hard that I would talk people into who contacted me about doing the mentalism show and be like, well, if you can give me I've been hired for gigs where they're like, hey, we want you to come in and do 20, 30 minutes for the group on stage. I'm like, okay, great. And then the week of, I was like, how much time do you want? Right, 30 or so minutes. Like, can we do 45? You do 45, I'll do the hypnosis show. And they're like, really? And I'm like, all right, great. So like, I've talked people into doing the hypnosis show when they originally contacted me for the mentalism show. And also when posed with a choice, and when I first got into it, it's also totally, I love the things that you think are one way and you realize how wrong it's going to be. I thought, oh man, when I learned hypnosis, it's going to be something that I could sell for more money. I can make X amount of dollars like I'm doing now with the mentalism show, but then I can, charge a premium for the hypnosis show. Well, then I fell in love with it. I was like, no, you charge the premium for the show you don't want to do, because then people are going to pick the less expensive option most of the time, and you get to do the show you want to do. And if they pick the more expensive one, well, then you made more money than you've ever made doing one of those shows. So that's cool too.
For my audience, can you explain the difference between mentalism and hypnosis?
In a mentalism show, I'm standing on stage telling you what I'm doing, and it looks like what I'm saying is happening, and it's all a lie. There is a trick. Most of the time, there is a trick. There is some sort of a gimmick. Something might be set up ahead of time. Again, I'm going to try to do this without spoiling how anything actually works, but it's a farce to a large extent. Nobody can actually read minds as far as we know, February in 2025. Anybody that says that they can is either just all in on the act or completely lying to you.
We're spiritually gifted. It happens.
So there's a big difference between having heightened perception, I believe, and being able to read minds, because there is a lot to be said for picking up on body language and just other way people will express themselves without saying the words. And anybody that is in this world, even in the hypnosis world, will learn to pick up on certain cues. We learn. I mean, when I first learned
If you
this,
know this about me, but actually I've been a medium since I was a child.
fantastic.
And so it's a very different kind of reading minds,
Yes.
because it's not that I'm actually looking at the client. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I go so deep. And so that's where hypnosis crosses over for me, is because of mediumship, I became aware of I'm in self-hypnosis as I'm doing it. And then because I know that, now I've been able to play with it in a different direction. But what I learned was trance is trance.
Right.
And if we open one, the other one's right there. And so there are times when I'm not even looking at the client because I'm in my own little self-hypnotic journey here. And then I will have their loved one coming through and telling me things. So depending on how you look at it, that's like my bias on mind reading. I'm not looking at their physiology. I'm not doing cold readings. I'm actually just up and out of here.
So yeah, so with my mentalism stage shows, it's all BS. It's all set up. There is a trick to it all. And the absolute opposite side of the coin with the hypnosis show is I am doing everything that I'm saying that I'm doing. And the thing that I think that really made me fall in love with it is that, like, a lot of magic especially is very, ooh, look what I can do. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. And you'd never know this from knowing me publicly, but I'm an absolute introvert who just plays
Yeah,
this extrovert out in public.
you're not the only one to say that. And I
It's a
find it so
thing.
fascinating.
And I think many of us find ourselves there. And even with mentalism, where everything that I'm doing on stage, and you'll see this in September because I got drug out of retirement, so to speak, to do mentalism show at the Michigan Hypnosis Conference. So if you're not going to be there, maybe it's time to start looking into it.
That'll be my first mentalism show.
Yeah, it's everything that I do uses audience participation. There's always people, but it's, it's a different person for every routine coming up, or a couple of people, or what have you. It's still a big element of look what I can do. Sometimes it's a little bit of a look what we could do, but it's still a lot of a look what I can do sort of thing. And the hypnosis in the stage shows really let me step aside and say, hey, look what they can do. Because it's you're taking people who literally just come up, pick a seat. Maybe I rearrange them a little bit depending. I don't want anybody sitting by friends, family members. I separate those. I want to eliminate whatever distractions that I can, but it really becomes their show. And I do everything that I can to kind of slink off into the background. Obviously, I'm directing the show at that point in time, but it's them. They are the stars of the show. It's not just something that might end up in a description of the show or on a promo to get people to show up and buy tickets. It is legit. And most of the shows that I see most of my colleagues doing run exactly that same way. These folks come up there, and especially the ones that really get into that mindset to go with it. I find that having some inherent, creative talent really opens people up a whole lot more as well. I mean, that if you're I'll tell you right now, if you're an artist and you ever experience like a mental block, you get stuck somewhere, you just can't make progress, go to a hypnosis show and get on that stage. Because whatever it is that's in your way, you don't have to tell the hypnotist this. You don't have to go into it thinking, hey, I'm going to get unblocked. You're going to get unblocked. You will come out of there refreshed, and whatever was in your way won't exist anymore. It will consider it gone. Just get yourself up on one of those stages and thank yourself for showing up there.
Do you think it's a break of state, or do you think it's just the act of engaging in hypnosis in a more concise kind of way?
I think it's really a blend of both, because it's a nice way to remind yourself of what it's like to open up. But also, it's hard to say that it doesn't create kind of a natural reset, and I know that we all get somewhere in our lives where we're just bogged down and there's too many things, especially now, where there's stuff dinging here and buzzing here and whatever, and hundreds and hundreds. We're in a land of notifications. You can't even watch, like, you stream TV now. There used to be commercials, right? There used to be commercials that would do their 30 seconds of, hey, come buy our stuff, come do this thing. Here in the fine print are all the side effects to the drug we want you to do, whatever it is. These commercials on these streaming services are now starting to get interactive. Like, click here and we'll take you there. It's not even just scan this QR code and you'll go to some website. It's getting, and they're just getting started with this stuff. So there's so much coming at us from all different directions all the time.
That's a different kind of trance. As people have been watching their show and then all of a sudden they're complying with an ad.
Yeah. And it's burdensome. So one of the beautiful things about hypnosis, and this is not just exclusive to stage hypnosis, it's certainly not, is that, okay, we're putting the blinders up. We're getting out of that world and we're getting into this world, wherever that world might take us for the next 30, 45 minutes, depending on the length of the show or the session. If you're doing something therapeutic or clinical, it's really, that wash, that deprivation of the world, I think, is a gift itself. And it's not a gift that the hypnotist is giving you. It's a gift that you have chosen to give you and have chosen to accept just by showing up there. And hey, if you don't get up on stage, be the cat that just goes out there and follows along and end up on stage at the end of the show. Because you can do that too. They may not tell you. They may even discourage you. I may be the a-hole for telling you to do it. But just do it.
You heard it here first.
Yes, I'm insured. It's okay. So yeah, back to we were this tangent got us from the how did I become Judge Mentalist. So I used magic and mentalism as an outlet and kind of the way to de-stress and but still be using my mind. And for the longest time, it was kind of a divide and conquer. I am this mystical, magical character on stage. Nobody's going to know that I'm an attorney unless they know me ahead of time or whatever. And it was fine, but like, you know, there's two types of characters that you could be really when you're on stage. One is something totally made up and it is whatever it is. Or the more common character that I see most performers is some larger version of themselves. You know, they take one or two traits about themselves or their personality and they just crank those up to 11 and they turn all the other stuff down. And separating those worlds made it difficult for me to be one of those types of characters. And I'm not really like a physical comedian type of person that's just going to, now I'm Andy Kaufman or whatever, you know, like I'm not going to get into it's just not me today. Who's to know? The more I hang around in rooms with folks like you, I may end up there. Who knows? But you know, it took some valuable mentorship and me listening to be like, no, they were like that being a lawyer, doing what you do is a superpower. Take the things that you do and elevate them, become, you know, somebody that is from that world and show how you can do these fun things, not just all the serious stuff that you do during the day on stage. And, you know, one of those mentors directed me to one of two folks. I don't like to name drop, but I certainly want to give them credit here. Dr. Larry Haas and then Jeff McBride, who Larry is the dean and Jeff runs the School of Mystery in Las Vegas, Nevada. They have been teaching magicians of all skill levels from very, very beginner to advanced people that are taking shows on the road and touring the world and everything like that. Larry was the one that was like, no, lean into this, make this your superpower. Talk to Jeff. He is brilliant when it comes to helping people come up with names for stage that really fit them. And it wasn't even a journey. It was like, and I'm sure that Larry had prepped Jeff on hey, he's going to come to you and ask you about names, so start thinking about them, but maybe not. But I went up to him and I said, hey, Larry said that I should talk to you, that you might be able to help me come up with some ideas for stage names that allow me to lean into, you know, the lawyer persona. And I felt like it was within moments that he turned to me and he goes, Judge Mentalist, you are Judge Mentalist. Because at that point in time, all I was doing on stage was mentalism. I had put all of the, you know, magic, traditional magic away and had kind of moved on and really found where I was at that point in time. This was pre-hypnosis, of course. So I really haven't found a new character.
You need to. It
And
works.
I don't know that I
it
need
fits.
to, although I am venturing into and we'll be doing some very unique shows come this summer. I'm going to be doing some versions of them where I'm performing at basketball halftime shows. So do I need to change the stage name? Probably not, because those shows go so quick that nobody's even going to know my name. I'm just going to be, you know, the halftime show hypnotist. But I'm also going to be doing some pre-show stuff at some minor league baseball parks this summer. I just had my first contact with one last night, and that's going to be an interesting thing because the basketball halftime shows are something that really only one person, Tom Silver, did with any sort of regularity. So he kind of runs the show on, hey, this is the format. He retired like 7 years ago and has been working with me to kind of, nobody's done them with any sort of regularity since. He's like, somebody's got to get out there and start doing this because there's hundreds of these games every year. There's plenty of opportunities. And, you know, it's a lot of heavy lifting and you can't really botch it in front of 20,000 people.
There are a lot of benefits.
I'm looking to botch it in front of 200 people when I'm doing a traditional stage show. But somebody reached out to me from a minor league baseball stadium about doing magic. And I'm like, well, you know, the normal conversation then, how about we do hypnosis, you know, during your 7th inning stretch? And I'm like, well, the 7th inning stretch is only like 2 minutes. So why don't we do something pre-show or pre-game? And I'm like, all right, let's talk. So we're kind of in the planning phases of figuring out, hey, what's that going to look like? How is that going to run? You know, there's a world of opportunity, a world of, you know, maybe you'll see me at one of your local baseball games. Who knows?
So The thing that I would like to touch on that I find particularly fascinating, we already kind of brought it up, is that some of these stage hypnotists and performers and mentalists are actually introverted. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Because as being part of the audience, that's not something that would ever occur to me. I always think, oh, these people are just naturally extroverted.
It's an outlet. It is for me a transformative way to just get out there and be not who I normally am. I am, you would not see me out and about in social settings like big groups, bars, clubs, or anything like that. You're not seeing me there this weekend. It's funny, a buddy of mine from undergrad reached out to me a couple of weeks or months ago in a group of people like, hey, we really need to get everybody back together. We were in a fraternity together in undergrad, and everybody graduates, they go their separate ways. They're different parts of the country, different parts of the world sometimes. And it's like, we got to get the gang back together. Okay, great. And he's like, don't worry. We'll pick a city where we can find a place to book a show for you to perform while we're there. I'm like, you get me. I don't want to go out. I don't want to be places and doing things unless it's work, unless it's this, unless I can go be the character, unless I can do the thing. Why get on the plane and go, and, cause there's little that's appealing to me about the city that was being discussed at the time was New Orleans. My level of desire to just hop on this plane and go get blackout drunk 3-4 nights in a row on Bourbon Street is, it's not a non-zero number, but it's hovering close. But you mix it up and say, hey, we'll find a show for you to book, and I don't care what it is. If it's a ticketed public show where they're paying me a bunch of money, or if we can link up with some nonprofit or school group to do a fundraiser show, which is quite frankly my absolute, if I never ever did a show again that wasn't doubling as a benefit for some cause, I would leave this earth a happy person if all I ever did were fundraiser shows. They're one of my favorite things. I not only have a completely separate website that is devoted to explaining the process of these fundraiser shows and the different ways that they work for organizations that are just getting started to ones that have been established, and I'm just being slotted in as the entertainment portion of a banquet or a gala. But I've started recruiting team members to hop on and be part of this website so that as it continues to grow and attract more business, people that are in other markets can take on some of that work, provide that same service. And, it's super fulfilling because you get to do the thing that you want to do. You're providing a really, really fun time for everybody that's involved in it. And by the way, you're doing a different type of change work here by raising $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for some worthy organization or a school group or whatever it might be, all in one night.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's it's fulfilling and it's a lot of fun. I ended up, because we started doing some shows that were not necessarily like, a lot of times people want to know, hey, this is a nonprofit, they've got the tax status, so I'm going to be able to write this off. That's great. Well, we started getting into shows for folks. Like we did one for a gal who was recovering and fighting stage 4 cervical cancer. Well, there's no organization there. There's no 501c3. So we started getting a little bit of hesitation on the sponsorship side, because we sell sponsorships when we do these shows as well. In fact, for most of our shows, our team is selling the sponsorships, and the bulk of that money goes to the organization. And they're hands off. They sell tickets, fill the room, because a lot of times I'm traveling. So, like if I'm in Maryland, so I'm on the East Coast, sometimes I'm getting on a plane to do this show. I don't have, I'm not famous. Nobody knows who I am. You only know who I am if you've seen my show. So it's not like David Copperfield's coming to town. Ooh, everybody rush to buy tickets. Like that organization's got to sell those tickets. My name is not selling those tickets. Nobody knows who Judge Mentalist is. And I'm okay with that. But feel free to, spread the word and say good things.
The people who know you know you.
But from anywhere, I can pick up the phone and my team can pick up the phone and say, hey, we're doing a fundraiser show next month for such and such an organization. Would you be interested in, and we really started as do you have a storefront that you would be able to post information about this show? And oh, by the way, can we send you sponsorship information when we're sending you those posters? If you're interested in really supporting, what we ended up doing is establishing a 501c3 organization so that if we take on one of those causes, or if we're working for a school group, it's so much easier and there's so less red tape through, school boards and departments and all of this up and down and everything. It's like, just have us come in, run all the money through us, and then we'll just cut you a big fat check at the end. And the nonprofits love it too, because a lot of times when people are vetting these nonprofits, they want to see the money in and the money out. Like what percentage of the money that we're giving you is actually being used for the cause? Well, now whatever money is being spent on advertising, promotion, or whatever, that's on my group. That's not on the group. That now it's just a big check. They're paying no money out. It's 100% money in on their end. Even the ticket processing fees, all of that's on my end. So it's really, really made it easier to help more and more of these groups setting all of that stuff up. And it's opened the door for us to be able to sell those sponsorships in a way that we use a vendor that doesn't charge any fee at all if we're doing, sponsorships and the nonprofit stuff, which is also great.
So I'm wondering, as you created Judge Mentalist and you stepped out there, how was that beneficial to have that shift, that ability to go from being the lawyer who worked every day in that kind of thankless scenario to the guy who's up on stage looking like a natural extrovert and getting people to laugh and break out of their shells?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a fun release for me, but it's also, it's opened the door to certainly some routines that I can do in some of my shows. And it really depends, because I do shows in a couple of different formats. I have a colleague of mine, a stage partner, that's a mentalist. So a lot of times we will do a 2-act show, and my show ends up being shorter. I'm the second act. He's the first act. But when I'm doing solo shows, the current run is a show that I call The Court of the Mind. And it gives me the opportunity to kind of extend that theme. And I'm really giving people on stage superpowers that they didn't know that they had, and, opening up the door. So I'll create, there are scenarios that get created that end up involving, I don't want to say courtroom drama, because that's not it. I'm not going to call it courtroom drama because I want people to show up to my shows, and that stuff's boring sometimes. But I'm empowering these people, and this is where it really gets silly sometimes, that they end up becoming the judge, but they're not the normal judge that's going to give you a traditional, hey, do some time in jail or pay a fine. You're the kind of judge that likes to give wacky, off the wall, unheard of penalties for crazy ass crimes, no matter how big or small. And it just really starts to just get the creativity going in people's subconscious mind. And I've heard, in doing these routines, I've heard some of the silliest stuff. I've had people, the penalty that somebody gave someone once in one of my shows, and there's not a person, there's no target. They went through a scene in which they committed the offensive act, whether they were either speeding or they ran a red light or something benign like that. And then they've got to kind of talk their way out of it to the officer and give some weird excuse as to why they were doing whatever the thing was. And the excuse is never good enough. And now it's time to go in front of the judge, but you're no longer the offender. You're now the judge. And I set this premise for them being this wacky judge. And I want to say, I mean, I've had people take baths in peanut butter as the penalty, or what was one? There was something involving popcorn and the Golden Girls. Like, it's the beautiful thing about the mind is that you never know what's coming next, which, full disclosure, for us stage hypnotists, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to create those opportunities and scenarios to really let people just, here's what I've got, and I'll tell you, there's always somebody, if I've got a line of people who have committed whatever traffic offense starts this whole sequence, and they're going to give the officers their excuse, it's the only universal I can say. I've yet to have somebody out of that row not needing to go use the bathroom. There's always somebody, always one. And sometimes it's a little more vulgar the way they describe it than others, but always somebody. One of them is always rushing to the bathroom for one reason or another.
So, as you know, on this podcast, we focus pretty heavily on trauma and trauma healing. And one of the things that trauma does is it really separates you from being present and being the full expression of who a person would ordinarily be. But that is the opposite of what you're doing with your stage hypnosis shows. You're pulling people up from out of that, and then you're giving them room to express something beyond themselves.
Well, I mean, it's a great way to, we talked about separating yourself from all of the noise that's in, the alerts and the notifications and the all of this stuff coming at us from all different angles. That's not all you're separating yourself from. And sometimes, coming and participating in one of these shows, and maybe you don't participate. Maybe you're just there and you're taking it all in, and you're dipping your toe in to be like, is that something that I'd really subject myself to? I can tell you the answer to the question should be yes, unless you saw the wrong show, which those, like I said, those weed themselves out fairly quickly, or fully disclose that they're going to be extra. It's a departure. It's a way to take a journey to who knows where. You get to determine where, and you may not consciously choose where, but it's such a release. It's such a just departure from any of that stuff that is burdening you and weighing you down. And it's just, you get to go on this refreshing journey that, you're not directly involved in change work, but I'd be hard pressed to say that it's not helping overall.
When I work with trauma, and that's one of the things that I do specialize in, often the big thing that I'm doing is trying to break the state and breaking the pattern in which they've entrenched themselves and they don't know how to get out of. And that is absolutely something that I could see working in terms of stage hypnosis. And that's why I asked before, is like, are you breaking state, or, what is happening there? But it sounds like that's very much one good way to do it. And
Yeah.
so one of the recommendations I get sometimes for clients when I do some of the more spiritual readings, like I go into the Akashic records and I will channel information that would be helpful. Sometimes I don't know these people at all. I have a name and an email address and I don't bother looking anything up. And it's just like, okay, let's see what happens. And sometimes the advice they'll get is go do like an impromptu joke stand up kind of class, go take this open mic night. And I'm always fascinated by those things. And it's a very specific thing that comes through.
Yeah.
And never fail. They always come back and they're like, that was exactly what I needed. But there's something bigger to that. And I think you touch on that with the stage shows as well, and then how it can help people break out of whatever mental, physical, bogged down state they're in.
Well, and sometimes the reason that you engage a hypnotist gets in the way, or it can. And if you're having trouble because the stakes are so high of I need to get past this, or I need to fix this, or I want to stop this, or I want to start that, or whatever it is, the goal. If that goal gets too big and the stakes get too high, you overthink the process and it makes it difficult to get where you need to be to do the work. There are no stakes in coming and participating in a stage show. The worst thing that's going to happen if you don't get where you need to be is that the hypnotist might send you back to your seat. No big deal. Otherwise, you're just up there locking in to have a good time. We're not worried about the result, so to speak. There isn't a goal here outside of having a good time and having a laugh and making others laugh and just that entire positivity being so infectious. And it's hypnosis is a skill, and not a skill that you and I are exhibiting. That's part of it, but it's a skill in the volunteer or the cooperator or whatever format and therefore
I've seen a lot of hypnotists who are not good at receiving hypnosis. They don't make good hypnotist clients.
And
yeah,
it's so imagine a scenario in which I don't need to get over this hurdle to start working on my problem. I'm just out here and I'm just going to step over this thing. And all of a sudden that hurdle that was so high before, because we're just now in fun time. Okay, here we are. And once you get it, it's kind of like, gonna date myself a little bit here. Those magic eye posters,
loved those.
which I
Yeah,
think were all the rage in the 90s.
yes.
And some people could just get them right away, right? Some people never got them. But if you were somewhere in between, I'm
Yeah, it was
speaking to you right now.
for me.
But once you got it, once you figured out how to approach the poster, it was never a thing anymore. It was like, oh, okay, there it is. It's a schooner, okay?
Yeah, I remember that exact one.
Yeah. So you want the junior way of learning how to get guided into trance? Here you go. We're not coming to solve or help you solve your problems.
Yeah.
We're just having a good time. The gloves are off.
That can still be tricky for some people. The
Oh, for
act
sure.
of
For
being
sure.
seen, of standing up, of engaging. What kind of tips do you have for someone to break through some of those unsure jitters and to get them to join up and have fun and break through?
So this actually starts at the beginning of my shows. So one of the reasons that, and not just because I was taught this, and it's one of the last things to be removed from the version of the show that I started doing when I first learned this, but with the pendulum work, one of the things that happens when I've got folks out there and they've got the pendulums and they're doing the thing is that there's always one or two folks that the whole time that pendulum's just there. And then I say, hey, look, this is a way for me to really gauge who can relax and let go and who has a more difficult time doing so. And inevitably, when I deliver that line, one or two of those pendulums just starts to go and go and go. And then I point it out. And it's kind of that same sort of like pivotal inflection point of like, that's what you wanted me to do. That's what I needed to do. So like the number one, just be open to do it. Number two, close your eyes.
Yeah.
If you can't see, it's so much more difficult to imagine people watching you. So just close your eyes and
And I
just
guess that comes down to allowing, like just being,
follow the journey.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's hard for people who've overcome trauma because they're working so hard to control everything in their environment and hyper vigilant that shifting into allowing feels opposite.
Yeah. And again, it's tough for
But
some
that's the
people.
ideal space to
For the
be
most
allowing.
part,
Yeah.
if you go up there and you're like, hey, there's no, oh, we've got to try this again. If it doesn't work, there's that's not it. We're not getting to the change work once we get you into trance here. We're just going to have a good time. So, when there's less on the line, there's nothing on the line, just
Right.
it's easier to just go with it.
Nothing to lose and all the chance to grow.
Yeah. And then once you figure it out, and if that's where you got to take the training wheels off at a stage show, great, because then you're going to show up to get some work done and be like, I am ready to go. And there we are.
So where do people find you?
Well, most of my stuff runs through judgementalist.com. Very simple, very straightforward. If you are interested in finding somebody, let's say you've got an organization in mind that is looking to raise funds in a different way and might be interested in doing one of these shows, uniquefundraiserideas.com. You may be able to get me there. I mean, you can specifically request me. I travel. I build that into the pricing. And a lot of the pricing that I do is no risk pricing for most organizations. But there's also a growing list of other hypnotists that not only do stage shows, but are specifically passionate about linking up with organizations and service groups and nonprofits and schools and things of that nature. And I have a feeling that list is going to continue to grow over time. Currently, not to be political about it, but currently some things and funding sources are being frozen. Whether that lasts forever or not, who knows? But times are probably going to get a little tougher for at least a year, because everything's been frozen now and those budgets are year to year. So I have a feeling that those phone calls are going to pick up even more, although we're plenty busy doing those shows. But it's, so as a result, we'll probably be adding even more performers that are, interested in servicing those types of communities. But it's really, really, it's fun. It's safe. It's something different. That's why the website's uniquefundraiserideas.com. That way, if you're looking for unique fundraiser ideas, well, that's the place.
And then tell us about the podcast.
So I have a couple podcasts that I do. One of them is it started by my stage partner and I in that Between Two Minds show, where we would break down, and you can still find these audio only, where after each show, or sometimes if we would go to a conference or a lecture, or if we would read some new book, we would break it down and talk about, what was good, what was bad, even on individual shows. And then Dan Goyette reached out to me before Dan, we were both performing separate shows, not together, at the Rochester, New York Fringe Festival last summer, and started reaching out to other performers to interview them about their shows and kind of cross-pollinate to help, each of us promote our shows together. And then Dan asked me to podcast at last year's Michigan Hypnosis Conference, which went well, but it was a lot of me talking to a presenter after they had presented. I'm like, we should probably turn this around. So the next time that I kind of shifted gears on that was leading up to the Performing Hypnosis Summit last month in Las Vegas, where I was like, hey, I'm going to go and reach out to these presenters ahead of time. We're going to sit down for 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes. We're going to talk about why people need to come to this conference, why they need to come to this talk, what they're going to get out of it. And that became wildly popular. It was wild because I walked into the hotel, and last minute my wife decided to come with me. Normally she does not like short cross-country trips because she gets jet lagged and everything like that. But it was super cold here. It was cold, but less cold in Las Vegas. This is January, so it's not hot 100 degrees all year round out there. She's like, I'm in. Let's go. Okay, cool. We get in. We're going into the hotel, and it's like 4 or 5 different groups of people. They're like, hey, and she's like, looks at me. She's like, how do you know all of these people? And secretly, to me, half of these people I had not met in person until that moment. But through this, I became somebody that everybody knew, whether they knew me or not. Everybody knew me. So it's a great way to no longer be a stranger in a strange land. That was wildly successful.
Do you find it occasionally jarring? Like, it happens to me, and it's like, people know me, and I'm expecting to not be known. And then I'm like, deer in the headlights. I feel so awkward.
Well, what you have to do is you've got to learn, if you're the introvert that goes out publicly and plays extrovert, is to realize that you have to turn that on the moment you get out of the Uber or the cab. You don't get to just wait until you're on stage to turn that on. You've got to turn it on before you walk into the hotel, because around every corner is a potential to be somebody that thinks you're not the introvert. So you've got to play that game. So they're going to be starting up for Heartland. So we'll be doing the reverse of this soon, where I'm talking to you about what you'll be presenting at Heartland.
Quite literally, you will be talking to me then.
Yes. Yep.
Because I'm presenting on podcasting, and then I'm also presenting with Dan.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So we'll be linking that up and talking about that sometime in the next couple of weeks. Dan's asking me to do it again. In the way that I've been doing it for PHS, leading up to
Michigan
Hypnosis
Conference,
right?
September.
And of course, by the time I get done with Michigan, it'll be time to gear up for the following year's PHS. So I guess I'm a full-time podcaster.
You are.
If you go to so all of that can also be found on YouTube. If you just search for Judge Mentalist, that'll find it, or youtube.com/ I think the @ psychic-ish from back in my mentalism days. So all of those are there. They usually live stream. So if you are subscribed to that channel, when I schedule one, you'll get an alert for it. Usually I try to schedule them at least 3-4 days ahead of time, so that folks out there can see them and know, oh, okay, that there's one of these coming. Once I get back into that gear, which right now it's kind of the, hey, start contacting people, start setting these up mode. Usually I do 1 or 2 of them every week leading up to the conference. My hope is to be able to get almost everybody. I think I got somewhere between 60 and 70% of the presenters for PHS, which is pretty good number to knock out, especially because some of these folks in the performance world are all over the world and on cruise ships and in places that are not as easy to connect to like this. Because if you're on a ship, maybe you've got solid Wi-Fi, maybe you don't, maybe the cruise line's giving it to you, maybe they're making you pay for it. Who knows? It's a mixed bag. It's all over the place. But yeah, we're going to get those going relatively soon. As you know, I've already started reaching out to people about setting up the Heartland ones. But yeah, that'll be the circuit. And eventually I'll end up at HTL. So that'll slot in after Heartland and before Michigan. And it'll literally, by this time next year, I'll probably be doing a podcast every
day,
2 times a week, just on hypnosis. And it's wild because it has definitely caused the show wrap up podcast to kind of fizzle, because there's so much of these interviews that end up in the way, which is great, because I think that in this world, in the world of hypnosis, we've got powerful tools that can do a lot of good for a lot of people. And despite the powerful ability that's there, there's still so few people that know. It's not something that is still incredibly wide scale understood. So it doesn't matter what it is. If it's, I was fulfilled. I was completely over the moon ecstatic to have just one person reach out to me and say, hey, I was on the fence about going to PHS, and then I saw that talk that you did, and I'm in. Like, I want eventually one of these talks, and especially when I'm doing it in a non-performance standpoint, where I'm interviewing somebody like you leading up to either Heartland or Michigan or eventually both, for somebody to like, oh, that's a thing? I can get that kind of help that way. And then they go and they do it. And I don't need to be the change worker. I'm happy being, the sign on the highway that says, this is the exit that you need to get off, because the answer you're looking for is right over there. And if I can lead somebody to that person, and it's, as you've got disciplines in which really are where you thrive. And there are other practitioners that want to attack other issues. So it shouldn't be a one fit for everybody all across the board. So the other thing this will continue to let me do as I'm doing these things is link up with okay, well, you have that. This is who you need to talk to. You want help with this? How about this guy? You want to quit smoking? Let's go, Vinny. Let's go. But to be that resource to people, because I don't need to, if I have this rich network of just amazing people that each have their own little specialties in this change work, I don't ever need to do it. I can just lead people to where they're going to get the help. I'd rather somebody go and get that help from somebody that's been helping people with that type of issue for 10 years, for 20 years, and know that they're just going to boom, go, than for me to, I had a friend of mine that said, hey, can you help? I have an employee that reached out to me because he knows that I know a hypnotist and he wants help to quit drinking. And I'm like, I would much rather link him up with somebody that's been doing this for a while, because don't get me wrong, I can put him in a trance and his eyes are going to be closed. So if I'm reading off of a script, can I do valuable work for him? Yeah. But can somebody else that knows what they're doing, that really knows what they're doing, move the ball for them so much further, so much faster? Yeah. Let's link that up. Let's make that happen.
I am really excited to hear what it's going to be like for you when you finally take organic hypnosis, because having just mostly come through it, I'm still doing some of the virtual stuff. It's blown my mind. And now it's become this tool that I regularly integrate into my sessions at any given point. Sometimes when I do trauma work, I use IEMT, and so we're using eye movement, and I'm changing the way that people relate to their memories, the way they feel about them. That's the perfect segue for organic hypnosis. And so it's not just smoking cessation anymore.
Right.
It's breaking people out of frozen states. Last week, just the last 2 weeks alone, I had one lady feeling gaslit in her relationship, and she didn't really know what was true anymore. And so we just hung out in organic hypnosis, and she had all kinds of breakthroughs. And within a couple of days, it escalated pretty quickly. And the person that she was with broke up because it became very, very clear that they were having different experiences in the relationship. She finally knew what was true.
Yeah. And sometimes, and the thing that's so powerful.
So I don't know where you're going to go. You're thinking smoking cessation, but I don't know.
I don't know where I'm going to go, but, sometimes it's understanding that, we have identities, and those things that those signs that we hang around our neck don't need to define us. And when you really break it down, a lot of times the sign that's around your neck doesn't define you. It defines such a small element of a small portion of your life. And when you get that proper perspective and take that sign off and understand that I'm not that, you're only a few steps away to realizing that whatever it is that you want to be, you can be. And then figure out how to go get it. And it just, man, imagine
you have a really dynamic way of doing things. So I think the minute that integrates in, it'll be really fascinating to see where you grow and where you go from there.
Look, again, all of these things that I say that I'll never do, the door's not, it might be closed right now, but it's certainly not locked. And, and again, sometimes the opportunities you don't know, you're not looking for them. And I got hired to do, well, it's in the future, but there's a gala for a recovery organization near me. They do a lot of drug work, recovery from drug addiction, and my light just died. So
see that.
Yeah. And I'm having a conversation with the executive director a couple of months ago about setting this up and me being the entertainment for their gala. And it's like, they had a stand-up comedian last year. Now let's get you to do this thing. And we just got to starting and to talking. And they're like, wait a minute. Can you do this? Because we somehow got talking about the group, the group smoking cessation. Like, can you come do that for one of our groups? I'm like, by the time that we're talking about me doing this, because the show's in May, I'm like, I'm totally like on board with experiencing that. Because to me, fill a room, 80 people that are in recovery, and I do my thing. Let's just say that it works for one person. One person walks out of that room, and I know that the numbers will be much higher, but let's just focus on one person. You're not changing one person's life when you change one person's life.
That's right.
We don't exist as single. We're
not in a vacuum.
This is a social world, no matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. I know that's been a big topic today. There is such a powerful ripple effect or domino effect of, okay, that person that you just helped, that they might be a father or a mother or a son or a daughter or a sister or a brother or whatever they are, they're a coworker. Or if you help them through recovery and they get a job that they haven't been able to get, they're going to be a coworker. They're going to be part of something more than just who they are. So you helping them, it just helps so much more, so much further than that. And just the opportunity to do that, whether it's little silly stuff up on stage or to actually make, and I don't want to diminish the fact that we do some impactful stuff for folks up on stage, but it's not the goal. The goal is funny, laugh. Let's have a good time tonight.
But I think that's the nature of hypnosis, is that it just is. And healing can be simple. It can be effortless, and it can actually just be fun.
So yeah, that's exciting stuff. And again, it's another kind of exit that I've taken that's a little detour from what the goal is here. I mean, I think that when I do that, though, it's going to be probably earth-shattering for me. And it may not be right away, but I just have this feeling, because all it's going to take is 6 months, 8 months later, somebody to circle back and track me down and be like, hey, that thing you did that time, and then spew. And I can tell you right now, it's something like that might really change the direction and trajectory of what I do 10 years from now. Who knows? Because if I can do that, and I know I can, and so can anybody else, why not? Like, make that kind, because it's such a powerful change, and probably 10 times, if not 100 times more rewarding than just writing some big check to a nonprofit who I'm sure is going to do great things with it, or a school group that's going to be able to buy new uniforms for their marching band, or whatever it is that we're doing this week.
Thank you so much. You have been so generous with your time and your insight. I've very much had a fun time chatting with you.
Well, thank you. Me too. I my favorite thing about these is that they're, we had no script, we had no agenda. We just, let's go. Let's see where this takes us. It'll be about an hour. Here we are, an hour and a half in, and we're not, like, presumably we're at the finish line.
That's what happens when you put multiple podcasters together.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, let's do it again soon.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll have you on soon for the Between Two Minds podcast, talking about Heartland, and that'll be awesome. So, yeah.
Any final thoughts you'd like to leave my audience with?
Well, I mean, look, we could clip out little snippets of all the different stuff that's happened here today. I think all that stuff is valuable. Let yourself go, and a great place to do it, to get off the training wheels of hypnosis. If you're there, go to one of these stage shows, figure it out. It's going to be great. Have a good time. Let yourself go and understand that most of us up on stage, if they've had proper training, and I will say this, it's very easy to say that if you research the hypnotists whose show you're going to see, and if they've been doing this for a while, if they've been doing this at least for a couple of years, they are focused on safety. They have been trained thoroughly on ethics. They're not taking this anywhere that it shouldn't go. Because if they ever do that stuff, they're not working anymore. That stuff catches up with you very fast. So somebody that's been continuously working for a number of years, you can kind of let the guard down and know that they're not going to do anything crazy. And really, those shows largely existed in Las Vegas with disclaimers that was going to be the tenor of that show from the beginning. And those are gone. There's really only one or two shows in Vegas right now, and there's some adult themes in them, but they're not inappropriate. They're fun and playful, and some 4-letter words might be said on stage. That's kind of really where the line gets extended to there. But just relax, let go, and allow that to just carry that off the stage and into your life, and realize that once you get up there and do that, you now know firsthand, you've experienced it, you can do whatever you want. Just go get it.
Yeah. I think the thing that rings truest for me is that healing is subtle. And so maybe you don't always hear back from the people who've attended, but I've had so many clients where we work on things intently and purposefully. Even myself as a client, if I go to another hypnotist, I receive a session. Sometimes I miss the subtlety of how much I've changed as a result of that session. It's like I'm trained in this stuff, and I still miss the huge after effects that ripple out. And it's not until months later. So I have no doubt that as you're breaking people into laughter and getting them to let go and to just be for a minute, that you're making big impact out there. And I'm really glad to know you're out there doing this.
Yeah, and there's many, many others doing it. So like I said, it's not thank me, it's thank yourself for going out there, finding that and taking that on. And you'll thank yourself.
All right. I very much look forward to seeing your Mentalist show in Michigan. That's going to be my first one. So
Fantastic.
no pressure, but you're gonna leave an imprint, I'm sure.
It'll be a fun time, I promise.
All right, Soulful Seekers, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to put all of the contact info for JoBeth or Judge Mentalist down into the description in the comments so you can find him if you want to book a gig, you want to enjoy a show, or have an experience that you can reach out to him, or maybe you've been in his audience before and you want to just leave him a note and let him know how he did actually make that impact on your life.
Awesome. Yeah.
As always, stay happy, stay healthy, but most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Trauma and Transcendence. If you found value in today's episode, remember to subscribe and to share. This podcast is brought to you by healingbeyondtrauma.com, supporting your journey beyond trauma and into transcendence. Until next time, take care and keep transcending.